Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win, or you find a way to lose. Let me tell y'all something, in case y'all didn't know. Terence Crawford and Errol Spence have become friends. And what they've done is exposed the secret society. Let me tell you something, man. You guys sitting out here, y'all haven't asked the question how Errol Spence and Terence Crawford got made? Or better yet, why Terence Crawford and Errol Spence didn't get made in the past. Let me tell you something. It's kind of cool now to see Errol Spence and Terence Crawford sitting together, being on interviews together. They're not sitting together, but being on interviews together and hearing the two of them talk. But for me,
forever,
I'm not listening to what they're saying. I'm watching their nonverbals. I'm watching their body language. And I'm watching the energy between the two of them. And I'm going to tell you, what I'm picking up is that Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, like my boy Mills and I were talking about briefly, going back and forth on Twitter, what I'm picking up is for Errol Spence, yes, he wanted to stick to his guns, like he said, not fight Keith Thurman, and give the fans the Terence Crawford fight for undisputed at 147, right? But that's not what I'm picking up, that Crawford as well wanted to fight for undisputed. But what I'm picking up between the two of them is that we know they've been talking on the phone every 2 weeks for the last who knows how many months, but I would say probably since last November, right? They've been on the phone. Because if you guys remember, right, the reason why the fight wasn't made, the negotiations broke down, it wasn't because of the venue, it wasn't because of the location, it was because of the money. It was because of the money. It was a huge issue. Remember, the back end, Crawford's got the connection with the $25 million, over the Saudi Arabian money. The back end, pay-per-view, all this crap. And I truly believe, right, that when Crawford and Spence had a chance to get on that telephone and talk after all the fallout, because remember what they had going on was public, man. It was messy. It was crazy.
forever
Spence,
is coming.
The Spence and Crawford fans have basically turned into like we were saying, like the Bloods and Crips. You know what I'm saying? That's really what it kind of turned into. My boy Mills is always saying Spence and Crawford fans are like the Bloods and the Crips. But that breakdown in negotiations didn't help at all. But the thing is, I'm sure when Crawford and Spence sat down and they talked, because Spence hasn't fought since April of 2022. And when he fought Ugas, Crawford fought December, but that was a joke fight. But he went on and had to stay busy fight. But that really wasn't what he wanted. I'm sure they took a look at this and said, we need to figure this out. Because I'm telling y'all right now, Crawford and Spence, they didn't have many other options. For with the position they were in, because in boxing, especially when you get to the position those guys are in, you want to move up the ladder, not reverse. And for Terence Crawford, there was no one else for him to fight that fans were going to accept and get behind unless it was Spence. And for Errol Spence, he had 3 belts, man. It doesn't make sense to keep having these lateral accomplishments. And the only fighter for him to fight, to make sure he's moving up the ladder and not reversing, was Terence Crawford. So now when they got on the phone, I am sure they were able to identify why the fight didn't get made. And I'm sure when Crawford was talking, Spence had some aha moments. When Spence was talking to Crawford, I'm sure Crawford had some aha moments, some things neither one of them probably knew. And when they sat there, they probably said, you know what, man? F all that. I didn't know that. That's what happened. Oh, I didn't know this yet. Well, this is what I want. What do you want? Let's just be real. What is it that you want, Spence and Crawford? What is it that you want? Crawford probably told him, hey, this is what I'm getting. Now, I don't know this. This is just me being a guy who's very observant. If money was the issue, and Terence Crawford knew he can get $25 million somewhere, how in the world are they both getting 8 figures? And I'm sure when they talked, Errol Spence listened. And whatever Errol Spence shared with Crawford about the back end, those two brains, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, put their minds together and they exposed the secret society for their greed and said, nah, this is how we make it work for us. So they came together with a plan on guarantees, back ends, projections, because, Crawford learned a lot. Understand, Crawford learned a lot going into those meetings by himself and trying to understand, trying to push for the transparency and understanding where every cent is going. And they were telling him a lot. Espinosa and those guys, some of the things Crawford was asking for is unrealistic, something we've never heard. Just basically trying to exploit his inexperience and take advantage of him, in my opinion. But I think he carried that into that conversation with Spence. And Spence isn't dumb either. He understands the business. Man down promotions. He's got to understand to a certain point. And I'm sure they put it all together. And when they took what each of them want, purse splits, guarantees, the back end projections, working on a rough estimation on what they should sell pay-per-view wise. Hopefully they did a conservative estimate, right? I'm sure what they presented to those guys, those key decision makers behind the scenes, what I'm going to sit here and call the secret society. I'm sure it sat there, man, and just blew their plans out the water. I'm going to give you a quick story, right? The reason why I feel that way and the deal got done, it's like going to a car dealership and trying to buy a vehicle. Give you a story. I remember, man, I had a Ford Escort ZX2. And I had that car for about 8 years. I'm not a guy who gets rid of vehicles. Anyway, I was driving and forgot what it's called, but the something shaft in the car, it just split in half. All of my, the valves bent and everything, so the engine was gone. Anyway, I had to go get a new vehicle. So back then I was doing really good, man, buying properties and land and all that and flipping it. So I went and looked at an X5. I looked at a Toyota Avalon, and I looked at a Honda Pilot, right? And I was single back then. So I got in the X5, and it was cool, but shit just didn't have any real room in there to me, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, it's cool, man, but because it's an X5 BMW, brand new, but there was no space. The Avalon, the guy didn't want to budge on the price. I went in the Honda Pilot. That was amazing. I was like, this is crazy. Comfortable, everything. So it's fully loaded too. This is back in 2005. So anyway, I go in there, and the guy who's trying to sell me the vehicle, he and I connected, man, because he was Jamaican, Chinese, and black mix. And of course, me being Trini, a mixture, not that mixture, but I ain't gonna get into my mixture, right? But he and I connected. So we in there vibing, and we're talking straight. I'm like, yo, man, I know you're gonna get a piece of money. I want this vehicle. I was like, but yo, I won't deal with no BS. So anyway, I go in, he says, all right. So he said, they're gonna try to stall you out. And he's telling me, when you're out here, Rush, and you're trying to work these negotiations, like they'll go back in there with the finance guy. He's like, they do nothing. They just sit there, drink coffee, and kick their feet up on the desk, and come back and just give you bullshit numbers. I'm like, all right. So what happened is I'm sitting there now. Now I'm tying all this into negotiations, right? And how to expose these people when you understand how things should work. So now they come to me with some numbers. They wanted like 33,000 or something. And I'm like, nah, man, I don't really want that to pay that much. So while they're talking to me, I go outside, I call my cousin. He's a finance manager for Honda in Tampa at the time. Talk to my cousin. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to buy this Honda. It has I think it had like, they wanted 33,000. I'm like, yo, but I'm looking to pay like 30. He's like, nah. He's like, the at cost price in that vehicle, Ross. He's like, you take that sticker price of the dealership when they sell so many vehicles, they get certain it's called hard something. He said, but basically get kickbacks. But he told me basically at the end of the day for that unit sold, he was like the no kidding at cost price would be more around 26,000. So and he knows because he was the finance manager down in Tampa. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I got the inside scoop on how this works. We're looking at the price on the vehicle, but just for the vehicle sold, the unit, the dealership gets X amount of money, and then there's something called hard cash. So there's with that money that they receive just for selling that vehicle, they should take that off the price, the sticker price, to really get me down to the at cost price of the vehicle. And I was like, cool. Now I wasn't gonna try to suck out the eyeballs. So this is what happens now. Kind of like Spence and Crawford. They got a chance to talk, to understand what one side's saying, what this one's saying, kind of talk about, this is really what we're looking at, right? Because I'm sure Spence and his team talked some rough numbers that Crawford wasn't privy to. Crawford and his guys talked some numbers that Spence wasn't privy to. Because remember, Al Haymon didn't even want to have that conversation with Terence Crawford. But when him and Spence came together, they were able to take all that conversation that was going on between both sides and share it with each other, the two guys who mattered the most, the fighters. And they said, oh, okay, this is how it's going to work. So now the finance guy comes back in there to talk to me, and he's trying to run these bullshit numbers by me again. And I just broke it down. And I told him exactly what my cousin told me, how to get it to that at cost price, the hard cash and all that. You sell so many units, you get kickbacks. That guy's tongue, his mouth was agape and his tongue fell out his mouth. He was just like he had peanut butter in him. Like, I was like, yeah. And he was like, hold on. So he left out. And my partner, the Jamaican Chinese dude, he's sitting there rolling. He's like, yo, how you know that? I said, yo, my cousin, man. He's a finance guy down there in Tampa. So the guy comes back and I said, look, I know your at cost price is like 26,000. You trying to charge me 33. I told you I wanted 30. So how about we do this? Just give me 29. We kind of meet right in the middle. 29,000 flat out the door. I'll take it right now. So they go there, man, and run my credit and all that. And then they realize, okay, this guy's credit is good. This man's in the military. He knows our secret society ways of doing business. And I got what I needed, and we were able to reach a deal. And the reason I give you that is because if I wouldn't have had that conversation with someone who knew the other side of things, I wouldn't have been able to bring that deal together and get what I wanted. And I think with Crawford and Spence, it's a very similar situation as going in to buy a vehicle. And, you're going in to buy a vehicle, but you don't have anyone there who can give you insight into how all this works or the conversation that's going on the other side of the wall. But I'm glad Spence and Crawford were able to get it done. But I'm telling you this, even though Spence, I got to be careful calling Spence the southpaw because Crawford is a goddamn southpaw as well. But Spence, although he could have chosen to fight someone else, I'm glad he chose to fight Crawford, man. This is good, man. This ongoing discussion has been going on for years. You know what I'm saying? And we talk about the breakdowns in negotiations. It seems to be that the revenue splits are not an issue now. Both of these guys are getting 8 figures. Don't know exactly how much, but I'm thinking can't be too far off from each of them getting 25 million apiece. Can't be too far off from that. No way you can't make me believe that Terence Crawford agreed to take less than 25 million or less than 20 million. You can't make me believe that. No way. But I'll tell you this, man, when it comes to Terence Crawford, he ain't playing around. And if they didn't get that money close to that, he would have shifted his attention to another fight just like before. I'm telling you, Terence Crawford bounced all around the world, all kinds of promoters, all different platforms, having conversations, and the whole while he was learning the business of boxing, learning what his value was, and that, in my opinion, is what really helped him and Spence get this across the line, because I think in turn he helped Spence really understand what his value was. You know what I'm saying? Spence's value isn't no 10 million, 13 million. His value is more than that. And for this fight, it's a lot more than that. So I think Crawford helped Spence to understand that. I'm not saying Spence didn't, but maybe he was more or less focused on how they doing them over there on PBC, paying them on a pay-per-view curve like that video I did. Give you a low guarantee, 3-4 million, but say you can make up to 30 million, but with the pay-per-view and this and that and live gate, that's a roll of the dice. You need that guaranteed money, and we understand in these days it's not easy to get those guarantees. But for these two, somebody's gonna have to take the risk, and I really feel that you got somebody who's covering those checks that are being cut to Crawford and Spence. I really do feel that. And I think it's a little bit more than just having, the guys from Saudi Arabia covering it. I know there's a lot of people who get involved when it comes to putting on a fight of this magnitude. Everybody wants a piece of the action. And there's people who come together to ensure they can give these fighters the guarantees that they want, no matter if the fight does well or not. I know that. But that being said, Crawford said he wanted to fight Spence. Spence said he wanted to fight Crawford. They were both men of their word. And now we've got it. Look, you're talking about two guys. There is a damn near close to 100% chance of somebody getting knocked out in this fight. Okay? Because we know both of these guys come to fight. And I like what Spence said. What Spence said. He said, once I get in the ring, I'm stepping. And I was like, yep. And he's like, when Crawford gets in the ring, same thing, he's stepping. So it's not going to be a matter of those guys in there trying to tickle each other. They're going to be out there putting their undefeated records on the line. 28-0 with Spence, and 20 knockouts, and 22 knockouts, and Crawford, 39 wins and 30 knockouts. They're going to be in there trying to knock each other out. And it's going to be a very interesting fight, very exciting fight. And I can't wait to see it, man. And I think it's going to cause, like it has now, plenty of waves, plenty of headlines. But at the end of the day, these two guys, I'm sure these guys have become friends. Talking to each other about each other's families, kids, laughing. They got a lot in common. These guys are the two number ones in the division. How can you sit there and have disdain or hate or malice towards someone else? Especially when you realize that you both are just being used. If Crawford and Spence both decide they're done with boxing, the ships continue to sail, man. You know what I mean? No one's going to care. It's just like somebody being in the out here as what do they call them, man? Not mission enablers, man. First responders. You wear a uniform, no matter what your uniform is. You in a company working, you can be an architect, you can be the project manager, you can be the CEO, CFO, COO. Then get somebody else to come in and take your position, man. They're not gonna care. Okay? Serious. After a couple of years, you may have a concentric few people who still keep up with you. Other than that, nobody cares. You're just a number. And these two understand that. But that's why I'm glad they sat there, man, shook hands, said, let's do it. And they didn't let anybody get in their way. But what this shows you is, just like this fight is going to make waves and headlines, what this shows you is that when you let these guys behind the scenes, the greedy bellies, and I'm not talking about Tyson Fury, when you let the greedy bellies, the secret society, those key decision makers, get involved, they complicate things, they stink things up. You know what I mean? Now the one plus to it, and I could understand this, Crawford had to sign a little 2-fight deal with PBC. And you kind of get that. Because if Crawford wins, then PBC has control of the belts. And then, it gives Spence an opportunity to try to rematch him and, for him to become undisputed. So you can understand where that's always been one of the limiting factors is, hey, we're not going to sit here and have an undisputed distinction and run the risk of losing, all of this hardware to someone who's floating around out there on Matchroom or on Top Rank or something like that. Okay? So I'm glad the fight's been made, but I'm telling you right now, these guys are friends, man. They're going to meet on July 29th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, unifying all those damn belts, IBF, WBC, WBA, the WBO. And it is going to be one of those things where I just think people are going to be so happy about how that fight goes down, about how these two perform. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be there with my score sheet, scoring every round by the minute. And you know what? That's just the way I'm deciding to do things. Max Kellerman talked about something that I thought was pretty interesting on how to score the fights. And since there's 10 points a fighter can earn, let's use that whole 10-point scale, 0 to 10. And instead of just 10 nines, 10 eights, why don't we see about going, from 0 to 10 for each fighter? So in one round, if it's close and you got to pick someone that's a 10-9, if someone gets knocked down, it's a 10-8. If someone just totally gets knocked down twice, now you're talking about a 10-6. So Max Kellerman made some good points. But he's saying every round shouldn't be scored the exact same as far as the points each fighter earns. It should be different. And, that helps, but let me tell you something. That's not the answer, but it's a step in the right direction. Me talking about scoring each round by the minute, it's not necessarily the answer, but it's a step in the right direction to try to ensure, to improve the accuracy of scoring the rounds for the correct person. But that being said, let's see what happens. I am excited about it, but I'm telling y'all, these guys are sitting back right now. They're gonna come. They're gonna bring it because that's what they do. And as you get closer to the fight, you're gonna see more intensity from Terence Crawford because he's just naturally a mean person. And I think you're gonna see that. I don't think it's gonna be nothing crazy because that ain't Errol Spence style. Neither one of you guys want to mess up their money. I think a message was sent loud and clear with Devin Haney and his poor choice, and I think that was planned and staged to shove Lomachenko. Well, I'll tell you what, if they're taking 10% of fighters' purses, and Crawford and Spence are getting, let's say, close to that $25 million each, I don't care what you say. Nobody wants to lose a few million for a stupid push. Okay? So hopefully these guys don't misplace their self-government and they do the right thing. Because I think it's selling itself right now. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone. And more interviews they do, I don't know what the press conference is going to entail. Is it June, July? Is right around the corner. I don't think they're going to Europe. I don't know if they're going to be up in New York, Miami, California, come to Texas. I don't know what kind of press conference schedule they got going on, but today's May 26th. You figure June, July, 60 days. They need to be in training. But to make time to go and fly around and miss a week of training and, dieting and rest and everything, I don't know. I don't know. So maybe the ball was kind of dropped there, but they're trying to make it for 2 fights this year, and that could be some of the those intricate and meticulous details in the contracts. Something that was just willing to absorb that and sacrifice a big international kind of press tour just to ensure they can get these fighters in for 2 fights this year. Maybe the second fight, since it could have about 5 or 6 months lead time, especially if there's not a lot of damage, cuts and stuff like that, anything broken. And they may do another press tour, a little bit, a decent one. But that being said, let's see what happens, man. I'm looking forward to this summer title unifier. It's going to be outstanding. Hey, I don't really have a pick in this fight. Both of them guys, man, I think it's 50-50. One guy is really physical, and what he does well. Mash up, crash up. It's Errol Spence. And the other guy's really technical, and folks fights with his eyes. What he does wonderful. That's Terence Crawford, and he's mean as hell, man. When these two come together, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. But what I'm most happy about is that these guys didn't let this secret society continue to railroad them, and more importantly, didn't turn them into enemies and have them seeing each other fighting and acting stupid and having their camps go at each other and stupid crap start to happen when in reality they shouldn't be pointing fingers at each other and being mad at each other. It's those guys who are involved, the key decision makers who get involved, and they complicate things. And then the fighters get frustrated and start targeting each other. Then the real guys who need a foot put up their backside, they're just sitting on the sidelines, sitting back watching. And I'm glad these guys here got this stuff together and made the fight happen. That being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. More importantly, in this case, yo, man, I just want to hail out Terence Crawford and Errol Spence showing these fighters how to get it done. Cut that fat. Sometimes you got to cut the fat. And that's what they did. And they were able to lean out the process and make the fight happen. Y'all keep cool in the breeze.